Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to Politics 2100, my channel here on YouTube. So, this episode I'm calling Right-Wing Animated by Fantasies of Encirclement by Government / Well-Intended People. So, this is a follow-up to the last episode where I'm talking about the cult of the deadly phallus and castration anxiety. So that's kind of a crystallization using a psychoanalytic sort of model of the psyche and the particular type of issues that may or may not be animating, in this case, the anti-vax movement, which is now synonymous in the United States in a way with the right wing, though there is some slight disputes, at least now, with Donald Trump now standing up for his own vaccination, not necessarily in favor of vaccine mandates and so forth and so on, but trying to take credit for the development of the vaccines as some of them occurred, some of the action occurred during the time of his presidency. So, but anyway, what I'm trying to follow up on is this is really sort of taking a little bit of a step back and more in the area of description of a psychological constellation that is very, very common on the right wing for decades and decades, really, at least, 70 or 80 years. And there's basically, it's a paranoia. So it's a form of paranoia animated by fantasies of encirclement, okay? That literally the walls are closing in on the right wing in terms of in their minds. And they imagine various scenarios. For instance, the idea that Joe Biden's mandates to get a vaccine are stricter than they are more encompassing, are that somehow the jackbooted thugs are going to come for, or jackbooted policemen or whatever are going to come for people who are not vaccinated, so forth and so on. And it's creating, now again, there are these two categories of right-wingers. They're the manipulative Machiavellian operators who don't necessarily believe these things, who they don't necessarily have these fears, but they see the fears in the paranoia tending base that they have, or the audience that they have, not necessarily the base in the sense that they're not necessarily political actors directly, in that they are, news entertainers, or they're commentator entertainers on like Tucker Carlson or Joe Rogan to some degree, and Alex Jones and so forth and so on. So all these people are people who are stoking the paranoia of the base. And the paranoia is a particular type of paranoia that involves a sense of that they're going to be encircled, okay? That they're going to be, that government, that in other words, that social cooperation, which involves communication between people and involves a widespread net, okay? In reality, it does involve laws. It involves, large-scale social cooperation invariably involves government, invariably involves some form of laws that synchronize people, that give people the sense of what's right or what's wrong, or let's say a big government program, at least that has lots of funding, that may or may not be based on some kind of laws that are about, what you're supposed to do, things you're supposed to do and not do, so forth and so on, but that incentivize behavior, but it comes from government, and so it's big, okay? So the bigness of it, I mean, if it were effective and if it were widely shared, like for instance, we need, because of the state of our climate, we need to be on a broad scale be acting to free ourselves from our dependence on fossil fuels And that would involve a large mobilization and government involvement and government paying lots of money for things to happen in people's homes, to change over to electric, all electric homes and to try to put solar, if you can, put solar on your home, or if not, that's fine. But anyway, but just to weatherize, all kinds of, to build, new buildings in a highly efficient way, and so forth and so on, and to build a large-scale transmission network that enables us to use renewable energy rather than fossil fuels. So it involves big actions that can, to the paranoid, feel encircling, to feel like that the walls are closing in on them. Okay, and one of the fantasies to resist this feeling of a encircling power is the fantasy of this deadly phallus, the idea that your gun is going to protect you from the tyranny of anything that remotely seems like a large-scale social cooperation that in other words, or an intention, even an intention to have such large-scale social cooperation. So the focus on woke culture, for instance, or the idea that anybody who has a good intention of some kind is dangerous. They're dangerous because eventually they're going to start to organize your life because they have a good intention. And it may be, in a way, there's an admission there somewhere deep down saying, well, those people are probably right, okay? In other words, we should be doing what often the sort of the well-intentioned are saying. I mean, for instance, stop smoking. It's like, well, it's a good idea not to smoke. So, and so people, that's become broadly accepted as being something that is not a subject of paranoia, largely because most people accept now the connection of smoking and disease, and also that it can become this individual struggle against addiction, which is very much in keeping with our culture and our individualistic culture of self-improvement and so forth and so on. But anyway, these large-scale efforts that involve, for instance, public health and also then action on climate change, which would be large-scale, which it's not happening right now. It's not. The Democrats are also not even in this, in the way they're not even the starting blocks in terms of what needs to happen with regard to climate action. But all of these things evoke fears in the right wing, and these fears are fears of newness, fears of change, which, some of those things, they need to be addressed in a rational way, and in a discussion. Yes, change can bring new challenges, and the implementation, for instance, of such a program would involve lots of iterative feedback in terms of how people respond to certain changes in should the bike, if you're trying to build lots of bike infrastructure, should it be on the street, should it be should it be on the sidewalk, should it be should it be elevated, there's a bunch of different things that I'm getting down in the weeds in a way when I talk about those things, but really the first step is the step back to this fight we have in our society between people who, and it's not even a fair fight in the sense that the people who have the good intentions right now, at least certainly, the people who have the good intentions and the party that's intending to use some kind of social cooperation to do improvements in society of some kind, to have a net of change of some kind happening. It's a party that is doing it on such a small scale and with such fear in it. It literally, these paranoid individuals and the paranoid narrative of the encirclement of government is part of our cultural DNA right now, in a sense, and it shouldn't be really. But it's become it's a successful campaign that really started in the 1970s and created a culture where this sort of and it includes in our Hollywood culture, includes in the way that we imagine heroism, so forth and so on. The hero is the lone person resisting the big encircling power of some, either, in science fiction, some, future evil empire, or, in the past, some, king, whatever, or fantasy king of some kind, that, or, any number of different, but the hero is this person who is, trying to save a small band of people who are, trying to do something heroic of some kind, or just to survive in some form or other. And so, but it's a, and they're in that the way they agitate, the way it is often just shooting, and and being marksmen of some kind, or warriors who fight and kill people, but mostly often using with the symbolism of guns and so forth and so on, and how powerful they are. And there's obviously the Rambo movies, which were sort of a cultural touchstone for this, and it's also, Rambo is also a sort of anti-communist fighter, a guy who's fighting exactly these people, these communists who, or really, or whatever, who they declared or not declared at least in the narrative of the story, and they were these people who were trying to encircle you with their laws, or with their ideology, with their that somehow that they were getting in the way of the individual, okay, by having intentions and the desire, or the to do some kind of social cooperation. And so, and that encircling power, and this is where, I mean, in the psychosexual area, so this is where we sort of have a sort of a feminine power being vanquished, or a feminine encirclement, either the mother smothering, or the castrating, vagina castrating, or whatever it is. All these fantasies that that this is, and these are all very primitive fantasies, but anyway, they're evoked by this, and this is the proto-Nazis in Germany. There's a book called Male Fantasies by a guy named Klaus Teweleit, and he looked at the diaries and the writings of these soldiers, the Freikorps, which were the Nazi, the basis for in the post World War I Germany, became the basis of the Nazi Party. And they were the militaristic men, all men who had fantasies about communist women in particular. So they sort of had the red woman as kind of their scary picture in their diaries and so forth and so on. And so this encircling power that is feminine, somehow identified with the feminine, and is and this is where this supposed the wonderful power of this deadly phallus that somehow is going to vanquish this hydra, or this encircling feminine power, which is the fantastic image for what is this, what I'm going into like what's called the primary process rather than secondary process, which is rational thought. I'm trying to go into this area to try to demystify it and make it seem somewhat ridiculous, actually, you know, and somewhat and really it just in some sense really kind of crazy, and it is kind of crazy, but it is also a craziness that is part of our cultural inheritance in the United States in particular, and it's again through Hollywood movies and so forth and so on, that the sort of the hero is this lone person, and also games. Also, in the gaming culture, you have first-person shooter games. You know, all of these games where you're being mobbed by encircling evil people, okay, who are, you know, or evil, or just your enemies in some form or other. Just that's the natural state, okay, in a first-person shooter game, and so. And those have been around for, you know, 25, 30 years at least. So this is ingrained in people's minds as being, you know, you are alone, and you're being impinged upon by having a conscience, among other things, having thoughts about how things could be different, and also, you know, together, how we could work together as a group on shared goals that don't necessarily, and this is where these people have, the people who are particularly swept up in this they have there's a fundamentally weak self, and this is David Shapiro, the psychologist who wrote Neurotic Styles, which is a book that has been read a lot, or in some psychology courses that tend to have a sort of a psychoanalytic influence. And in that book, he talks about the paranoid style as being, you know, there's an incredibly weak self, that the paranoid person feels very, very weak, and so they worship, and that this social cooperation that might happen based on having good intentions, that this movement or whatever, or this government program or whatever it is, that it will erase them. They feel that it will erase them, that all of their personal concerns will be obliterated by this program. I mean, I'm trying to make it so extreme, but address it in plain terms here, so that this fantasy can be a little bit weakened, a little bit dispersed, okay, in people who have it. And I think all of us have it to some degree. So there was another episode where I use another psychoanalytic school or approach. So I talk about the paranoid schizoid core, okay? And we all have a paranoid schizoid core, according to Melanie Klein. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. That's a speculative idea. But certainly the way in which the right wing has mobilized people, and also the propaganda campaign of media and so forth and so on, it's certainly the stripping away of some of the more mature ability to form relationships and tolerate ambiguity have been lessened and weakened, and people retreat back to this paranoid schizoid position, seemingly, where they feel like all social, it's all suspect in terms of all efforts of government or of individuals, but basically mostly government, to make something somewhat better, or to change things in some form or other, are an attack on the self. That it's about, you're going to lose yourself. You're going to lose and you know, in I was using earlier the Freudian concept of castration being this event, and maybe that's too reductive to sex organs and Freud's theory about psychosexual development. the other psychoanalytic school, the Melanie Klein school, the object relations school, you know, is more about self or relationships between people and attachment and so forth and so on, and also the characterization of the self being either, you know, in this case weak, or in this case the sense of being too unable to tolerate the idea that, you know, yeah, okay, you can be part of a movement to make society better, and also you can have your own personal view of things and your own personal life, and you know, it won't be, one won't negate the other. Okay, one won't be totally, it won't totally take you over. You won't be totally taken over by government, you know, doing a Green New Deal. Okay, you will still exist. You'll do some things certain different. Let's say in, you know, I'm wearing a Green New Deal t-shirt here, but so you will be doing things differently in your life, maybe, but still you will have relationships with X, Y, Z, your parents, your family, your wife, your husband, you know, whatever it is. So you'll be, you know, but you'll also be, you know, I'm using trivial things. You might be, you know, you might be biking more. You might be using an electric bike. You might be, you know, you might have a composting, you know, campaign, and you might be using products that you have less waste and lower impact on the environment, and you know, things might be changing in your life, and they'll be changing, in my opinion, for the better. But anyway, but it will be change. But people who feel like they're weak and that they will lose themselves, they will lose who they are in this change. Okay, and we have not experienced any of this change. The right wing is already preemptively projecting this, and cleverly. It's a politically very clever thing, and they are sitting on top of this cultural set of cultural fantasies that I am trying to undermine. Okay, these cultural fantasies are destructive. Okay, they are very, very destructive, and they are unreal. Okay, there are some instances of totalitarian societies which we are in known danger of becoming, but through most of the history of the last 250 years, most societies are not that, okay? And we are not going to become that society, you know, with very, very high probability. You know, again, we're talking no prediction. We can't make 100% predictions, but still, in the fantasy world, though, of the right wing, it's already happened. This is fantasy. This is not reality. Okay. So in the fantasy world, it's either already happened or it's about to happen, that the supposedly radical left, which is Joe Biden being radical left, is imminently going to change everybody's life, unless we, the right wing, go out with our guns and, you know, and shoot, kill. Okay. That's the, but it is entirely fantastic. Okay, it is based on shreds of what we've what we've taken in from our culture, and then also the political operatives who are trying to scare people. And there are, behind the scenes, though, there are people, the real beneficiaries of this. In other words, this is not benefiting, this whole enacting these fantasies, it seems exciting, or it seems like reinforcing for people who think this way, to think about, you know, this armed conflict that they are going to shoot these communists in, or they're going to you know, involve themselves in basically terrorism, okay, and sedition, okay, like the January 6th seditionists and rioters, Um, they think of it as this grand day, and so forth. It was so much fun, you know. And for some of them, they did. They're treasuring it, they're enjoying it, so forth and so on. In there, but in terms of the benefit to their lives, I mean, it's a high, maybe a high for them, a superficial high. But in terms of, you know, them getting medical care and them, I mean, many of the rioters are asking Donald Trump for, you know, to help them with their legal case, and they don't get any help from him. So it's like, in terms of reality, the benefit is not there. It's detracting from their lives in some ways. But the true beneficiaries of this chaos are, at least to date, are the forces, the crony capitalist elite, okay, who don't want any change. And so this neo-fascist, paranoid cult that is very, it's pretty well organized, actually, relatively speaking, given its craziness, but it's hooked into our cultural memes and so forth and so on. But the beneficiaries are those people. It holds our political system in stasis, and that's the people who are doing the best in our society. The people who are the richest want things to stay the same. They want things to continue, and they don't want politicians to have ambitions to change things. They don't want it, and so if it takes for them having this neo-fascist gang or gangs holding the politics hostage for nothing to change, for their tax rates to either stay the same or go down, for them to maintain the control and the influence they have over the economy behind the scenes, okay, because these neo-fascists are not challenging them at all in that area. They're protecting the big cheeses, the people who are making all the money. So so basically the government could, and the government could, as it did in the 1930s and during the World War II mobilization, could take a much more leading role in the economy and could be changing things and so forth and so on for a variety of reasons. And these capitalists, mostly, or, you know, rich people, don't want that to happen again. And the financial sector doesn't want that to happen. They don't want to be regulated. They don't want to lose control of what they already control a lot of, and the games that they're playing. They want to play the games they want to play, and which means impoverishment, which means bankruptcy for, you know, ordinary people, for medical bills, and it's, you know, foreclosure and eviction, and so it's not a good society, okay. And but anyway, so these fantasies, they're involving for people who are inclined, who have a paranoid tendency, and are fearful, but they are not in touch with the reality, their own reality, even their own material reality, in 99% of the cases so anyway, so I'm just trying to expand on these concepts that I don't think get enough, people don't talk about it in the way that I'm talking about it, and I'm trying to expose the framework, the psychological framework that I think underlies a lot of, basically, what I'm describing is the right wing of the last 50, 60 years. It's pretty much the entire 70 years, pretty much the entire psychological structure, and it's repetitive, and it basically, and it's again and again the same structures. And I think I will try again in different episodes to clarify or to alter to some degree this particular way of describing this group psychological reality. Anyway, so I want going on long enough, so I just want to put a stop here, and I hope some of the things I've said have resonated with you, and maybe if they haven't, you could tell me which are unproductive and maybe which are productive, and helpful maybe. Also, if you are interested in, if you like this video, please like it. And also, if you are liking the content in general of Politics 2100, please subscribe. And I will see you in the next video.